Hey there, YTPC and fellow codgers. It's your boy Cosmo, the Cat Dad Piper. Just coming to you for a week 2 roundup of the Codger Challenge 2025, generously hosted by our friend Paladin Piper. This week we're going to be discussing the tobacco. We're going to reveal the name of the tobacco and well as do a proper tobacco tasting. So this has been a really interesting blend. I've got it packed in my panel Medico pipe. Of the 4 that I'm using this month, this one probably gives the most average flavor of the 4. It's a little more flavor than the smaller pipes, and maybe not as much flavor as the 320. So this is kind of the average, I guess. Before we get into that little PSA, wearing my new golfer cap that I crocheted. Hoping to start doing these if people are interested in them. You can email me, nondairykramer at gmail.com, and we can talk color and price option. And still working out the price details, but part of that's figuring out what the cost of yarn is these days, now that Joanna is out of business. But anyways, I think it's a nice little cap. It fits pretty good. If it's not loose, it's a little snug. It will stretch a little bit because it's yarn. But anyways, back to tobacco tasting. As you can see, I've got about half of it jarred up. Now, a reminder as far as what this is 50% Carter Hall, which we know is a Burley Virginia blend. A lot of times you'll get bourbon or cocoa or chocolate notes. And then 50% unknown cherry Cavendish, so black Cavendish with cherry flavoring. Going into the tin note, or the jar note, I guess. It's calmed down a little bit, but it smells fantastic. I get a nice sweet cocoa smell. A little bit of a creaminess, maybe from like a Virginia or the bourbon. So creamy chocolate. And just a hint of like a fruitiness or a cherry note, but not too strong. Dominant aroma off this is chocolate, and it smells fantastic. Like I said, it smells like a cherry cordial or chocolate covered cherry. But the interesting thing I've noticed about this tobacco is that the actual smoking note, the taste that I'm getting, doesn't quite match up. So that made it difficult to name this tobacco. You're going to have to stay tuned to see what I call it. Although the thumbnail will be a little bit of a hint. So, as with any tobacco tasting, this is just what I'm tasting, just my thoughts, my insights. If you made this blend up yourself, you might get something different. Of course, you might be using a different cherry Cavendish, which could affect it. I know something like Blood Red Moon, the cherry would come out way more. Or even like a Paladin Black Cherry. Let's give it a True Light, see what we got going on. Maybe I'll switch to matches. The lighter wasn't doing a whole lot. Of course, I've already smoked this about 10-12 times, I think, this month. I'm just not having luck. Apparently the flame is a little camera shy. But already off the char light, getting a nice light sweetness. Getting that natural Virginia flavor and a nice little hint of, I'd call cocoa. Not full-on chocolate. But not so sweet, not so chocolatey that I would call it necessarily an aromatic. Just kind of the natural cocoa taste that you get from Carter Hall. If you know, you know. So as I'm puffing away on this, I'm getting a, not the lightest mouthfeel as far as the thickness of the smoke in my mouth, but a light to maybe light medium. Apparently I can't keep this lit for whatever reason. Usually that's not a problem. Apologies to any background noise. I got neighbors in the area. It sounds like they're unloading construction equipment, etc. Thought they were done. So I'm getting a really natural grain taste that you would expect from Virginia's. Sweetness has subsided a little bit, but it's still there. Getting a whisper of the cocoa. Getting a little bit of sharpness, a little bit of like a booziness that you might get from like a bourbon note, but not really getting a bourbon taste. And there's an even less than the cocoa, there's a slight hint of cherry. Almost more of like cherry skin versus the fruit. Not unpleasant. A little nasally congested because of allergies right now, but we'll see if I can get a retrohale and see if I can get anything off of that. And so retrohale, I'm getting more so cherry and bourbon. A little bit of tingling on the nose here. Again, not as sweet or aromatic as the jar would have you believe, but it's still a very pleasant, I would say average to above average taste. The room note is very pleasant. And that's kind of where the name comes from. To me, this smells like, as far as the room note, as far as the smoking experience, it is getting very CODGER, tobacconist shop smell. Getting the Virginias, you're getting that little bit of smokiness from the pipe. Getting a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of cherry. So it reminds me of like your old CODGER blends walking into an old tobacco shop. And so, I've decided to call this tobacco Cigar Store Indian. So named for the wooden Indians that would stand out cigar stores and tobacco shops back in the day. I always associate Cigar Store Indian with the TV show from the 80s and 90s, Cheers, because they always have one right inside the door of the bar. So growing up, I was familiar with the Cigar Store Indian before I even knew what it was. So as I'm continuing to smoke down, I'm at about a third to halfway through the bowl. Cocoa's fading a little bit maybe, but it's still staying relatively consistent. What I'm going to do now is what I do with all my tobacco tastings. And if you want to see more, there is a playlist on my channel. I'm going to put this on pause, smoke towards down to the bottom bowl, come back, let you know if anything changes, and give you some final thoughts. So hold on just one moment. Alright, and I'm back. I am on about the last third to fourth of the bowl. I've noticed with the Cigar Store Indian that not a whole lot's changed. It's a consistent smoke. Excuse me. Some of the sweetness, some of the cocoa and cherry have kind of faded away, leaving just kind of a neutral tobacco smoke, leaving more of that Carter Hall. I would say this is a pretty good blend. Not my favorite, but not a bad blend. It's pleasant. It's essentially Carter Hall with a little something extra going on. I have no problem smoking this, but I probably won't make another batch after this month and just enjoy the Carter Hall as is. If I were to give this a rating out of 10, I'd probably say a 7.5 or a 7.75. So, anyways, I'm going to finish this up, head inside, make some dinner. Glad you could join me for week 2 of the CODGER challenge. If you're one of the CODGERs in the YTPC doing the challenge, hope it's going well for you. I know we lost at least one buddy, but for good reason. And stay strong. We're all in this together. I know we can get through here. We're halfway mark. But as always, thanks for watching. God bless. See you soon.